customers in 53 countries, and so we provide the hardware, software, network infrastructure for companies, individuals, and organizations to have a website on the internet. We don't build a website, but we do provide the necessary infrastructure, and for that service, people pay a monthly fee. Got a customer right here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not always on time.
And so we founded Modwest in 2000, and after 5.5, 6 years, the web hosting industry evolved to a point at which we realized that there was essentially, by some estimates, 30,000 web hosting companies in the United States alone. And my hunch is that about 80% of those are sort of a one-man server show, so it's this highly fragmented industry in which an awful lot of competitors compete on price. They just want to give you everything for $1 a month. So that's not necessarily a market that we wanted to compete in. It's sort of a race for the bottom about who can give away more for a lower and lower price, shrinking margins, and it's hard work. And so we started looking at other opportunities, and this is right about the time in which Web 2.0 was sort of being born. And so there was cool new technologies and these new ideas of openness and collaboration and connection associated with Web 2.0 that we knew we wanted to do something in that space. And so near the end of 2006, Stephen invented this idea of, well, imagine if you had this sort of web-based polling system, this sort of survey system, but it was social in nature. And so we didn't really see necessarily a revenue or a business model, but we had this idea for this interface, this method of communicating with others online, and so we had to build it and see if it stuck. The idea at the time was to develop something that would immediately scale to hundreds of thousands or millions of users, and that Google or Yahoo would become interested and snap it up, and we'd ride off into the sunset and have daiquiris, which was not an uncommon dream in 2006, and because there were guys who were doing that and gals who were making companies, and even 6-9 months later were being acquired by Google and Yahoo and other big players. I think it was in late 2006 that YouTube was acquired for $1.6 billion. There's no revenue model there, just let's share content. So we had our eyes were wide with those prospects. The experiment, the social experiment that groupthink represents was a success. We did a little bit of sort of viral marketing stuff where we just kind of told our friends and told our friends to tell their friends, and provided lots of tools for people to share the site with others. And it spread like not necessarily like wildfire, but definitely a nice slow burn. And so we did end up with thousands of users from all over the world who were connecting with each other and defining their personalities by the topics they were proposing and the answers that they were adding and the photos that they were associating with answers, and how they were voting, and so it stuck. Then the challenge was, all right, well, now we have something that we know people enjoy doing. How can this be useful to a company?
Honestly, your experience is probably going to be
pick it up there, or
sure.
Talk about this.
Yeah, I imagine some of you may be wondering what groupthink actually does, right? How many here have been to groupthink.com? Okay, so good. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about how the idea came about. I have some experience hosting communities. I hosted a successful gaming community for fans of a game called Hitman, and called hitmanforum.com, and it's the dominant fan site for that game, and I've sold it since. But through that experience and my own experiences, I learned a few things about these discussion forums, and one is that people will work for free if they're passionate about a product or an idea. And in my example, I had people writing me every week asking if they could be a moderator for this forum, which is obviously a non-paid position and takes a lot of work. And and secondly, there's a lot of creativity and problem solving that happens in free-form discussion areas. And gamers and fans of various products want manufacturers and publishers to hear these ideas. And through interviewing some of the developers, I learned that they want to get at this information too, but there's this disconnect. And it's largely due to the chaos that you've probably all seen in discussion forums, which is there's a lot of redundancy, people posting the same topics and the same answers. You may have had an experience where you go to a discussion forum and you ask a new question, or what you think is a new question, and people flame you because it's already been brought up once or twice or 10 times. And the search doesn't work as well as it should, so it's hard to find that information. And also in these free-form discussion areas, there's a lot of noise. People end up having, bickering little arguments inside a thread that may have at one time been really valuable and relevant. And things tend to degenerate over time when there's no filtering mechanism. And it's not the fault of people, it's the structure inherent to these discussion areas where everything is it's simply chronological order. And it's a free-for-all type of environment. So what we wanted to do was solve that problem and take all the great things about these free-form discussion areas and let people be demonstrative and creative and not locked into a typical survey environment, but structure it in a way so that you could drop into a conversation and immediately see which opinions are shared by the most people. So that was the problem we attempted to solve with groupthink, and I think we're on the path to doing that. So a few things we've done to solve the chaos problem is take away the redundancy. And so when you post a topic at groupthink, we check existing topics and try to match it up, and highly recommend that you go to those topics. And then we do the same thing with answers and responses to those topics. So, one of our most popular topics is, for better or worse, sexiest women alive, right? And there's no reason to have Angelina Jolie mentioned 10 times in the same topic. If you type Angela, you're going to be prompted to vote on the existing answer. But on top of that, there's no reason to have one topic named sexiest women alive and another topic named hottest women alive. So we try to keep these topics lumped together. So that's one piece of it. The other piece is that once you do that, those topics have to be relevant over time. So the idea with groupthink is that the answers and results are constantly changing. So you could theoretically see what people are thinking today versus what their dominant opinions were 3 years ago. So that's the basic idea, and then we allow people to have their comments and unrelated, the noise factor separated out from the actual responses. We do that through UI and structuring the conversation differently. So last year, I was fortunate to be invited to speak at MIT, and through that experience found our first client, which is General Mills, and they are taking the groupthink platform and applying it to their consumer advisory panel, which they have 20 or 30,000 of these consumers, and posing questions. And the reason they're drawn to groupthink is you can ask the sort of qualitative questions that have many right answers without having to concoct a multiple choice question that has all those potential answers. So it's a convenience thing, but it also allows them to get at insights they can't get to through traditional surveys. That's kind of the overview. So I don't know, I think I wanted to open up for questions, and but also ask, where you think this type of application would apply best in, business or government or anything that might come to mind. I'm sure you have lots of questions or completely confused at this point. So, hit me.
I had a question, actually.
Yeah.
I actually asked Drake.
Yeah.
Dave Drake.
You kind of told me the answer, but I'm wondering, you don't allow there to be a deadline on polls, and he explained why, and I can see from your description why you would not have I'm wondering if there'd be a way to have a snapshot, because sometimes you need to make a decision by a certain point.
Exactly.
It'd be nice to kind of like, okay, you know, this poll isn't gonna end, but there'll be a snapshot taken at this date, and the decision will be made on that snapshot.
Yeah, right now, it's purely designed to let topics last forever and try to keep them relevant forever. But we run into cases where we thought it would be really nice to be able to have a deadline. And one particular example would be a predictive question, where you ask people, who do you think is going to be president of the US in 2010, or whenever it is. There's no reason to have that question last years and years beyond that date once we all know the right answer. So for the predictive types of questions, we want to, and we're starting to work on the ability to have different types of topics. One is a predictive market type of question like that. Another would be a wish list. We use a wish list at Groupthink. It's our very first topic, and it's called How Would You Improve Groupthink? And it's a free-for-all. Anyone can post a new idea there. But at some point, we end up implementing some of the answers. One of those is we would like to be able to add answers by a URL instead of doing an actual file upload. And as soon as we implement that feature, we would like to take that answer off the topic, but also allow people to, if they want, see all the implemented answers, or all the wishes that were granted, basically. And there are a wide assortment of these types of wish list questions out there. And so I think the answer to your question is that we want to be at a point where you can ask different types of questions on Groupthink and handle them slightly differently based on the type of question they are.
Because, I mean, specifically, I was thinking for the agenda wall,
Yeah,
you need a deadline.
right. And to increase that sense of urgency too, if you're trying to promote answers within a certain time frame too, I think would be really valuable.
This is more an observation, but this is very interesting, this group thing. I've never been there. I'm looking forward to going on the website. But in the global warming conversation in the United States, there's this very interesting kind of dichotomy now. There's this enormous amount of activity from the major environmental groups and kind of the mainstream conversation in Congress about making this gradual transition away from fossil fuels. He's cut 80% by 2050. And then our organization, which is a smaller group and growing group, is, no, we got to make those cuts 25 years early. And so it seems like there might be a way, and what I'm trying to do is, I want to find those people that are kind of where we are, and they're ready to, they agree with that, and they're ready to fight for that. And because I keep running in these walls, I'll start talking like, yeah, it's a serious problem, then people know I want to support this more gradual solution. So it would be a real opportunity.
To find people who fit a profile.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on this question. And then the other thing is, in terms of sense of urgency, I don't think I fully understand what you're just talking about, but also there's this really urgent political timetable. The international community needs to come up with a succession of the Kyoto Protocol by the end of 2009. And if we don't, there's a very real chance that the whole thing could disintegrate, and then we've got nothing. It's a very dangerous situation. The clock is ticking on that. So it's interesting. I'll have to, if you have any ideas about.
Well, one cool thing we've done that I find really neat on Groupthink is that there's a similarity ranking where once you've participated in Groupthink on a number of different topics, we do a calculation against every other member and rate your similarity to that person. Now, right now on the public groupthink.com site, we obviously don't give anyone the tools to look at individual votes or anything like that. But as a client of Groupthink Pro, you will have that capability. And our first client is getting some of those capabilities now for their own private community, not for groupthink.com, but for. I saw the it's like, no, why don't I vote exposed? So that's how we're making everybody selling all your personal. Yeah.
General Mills,
Right.
cereal to sell.
Right. Yeah. So you could probably come up with some neat ways to mine that voting data.
Yeah.
To find that information.
And also it's a way for us to find, people that be willing to support us financially, become members, et cetera. There are affiliated groups around the country.
So you're essentially, you're wanting to sell this product to companies, so the companies can basically get a pulse on their products.
Right.
Well, what comes to mind is, and I think it's a great idea, I wonder if you could connect it to, we do a lot of tech support, because we, Democracy in Action, we're a CRM, and so tech support is a big part of what we do, and I wonder if there's a way to sell this to companies that are developing software, online tools. So, in addition to writing in your support tickets, you could get a pulse of like how you're gonna develop your next version of your software.
Exactly. That's really ultimately where the idea first came to me, is when I was on a gaming community. And if you go to these gaming websites, the most popular topic, if it's a game that comes out every so many years, is what do you want to see in the next version of this? Madden NFL is a great example. It comes out every year. And the most popular topics there are people's wish lists. I want, better graphics or better physics and all these things. But there's no way when you go to the forum to get at the consensus and see which opinions are rated most highly. And you can only imagine that the developers would probably want that information too, let alone things like bugs, bug reporting and that. So I see that as possibly some of the lowest hanging fruit that could really, where this could be best applied.
Right, I can see us using it.
Yeah. And Modwest is going to use it in the next month or two for our hosting customers to get their pulse.
That's great. And what about, have you looked into doing any kind of app exchange with Salesforce?
Interestingly enough, I have looked into that a little bit. They have a product called Salesforce Ideas, which many of you probably heard. Starbucks has just started using that. And it's a different model, but they're trying to get the same type of information. They probably could be considered a competitor to us, and I don't know quite enough about them to know for sure. I think we're trying to fill two different niches right now. So I would approach that relationship delicately at this point. And right now we're trying to stay just under the radar. We're not doing PR yet. We're hoping to launch this in December. And we're talking to investors and doing some due diligence now to really take advantage of the opportunity. But I think once we have our product really ready for prime time, then we'll be probably aggressively looking at some strategic partnerships like that.
That's one thing that took me the longest time to figure out.
I haven't really used the site. I looked at it just for now, but how does it work? Can anybody ask the question and then your tool automatically sort of recognizes and groups them together?
Yeah, it doesn't automatically right now. Right now we encourage people through some keyword matching as they're submitting content to group things together. The community has been really good at policing itself as well.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Almost too aggressively. Duplicate. And we've got, we have a student in doing his master's thesis on groupthink this summer. And the aim is to implement natural language processing on the data so that we can be even more effective at helping people find the right information and also group information too.
So then when someone comes along, they get one vote on that topic and
they get more than one.
Okay.
So that's another thing that makes groupthink so different from any other survey you probably participated in. You probably heard people talk about presidential elections and how you only get one vote. Well, why couldn't I vote for Nader and Gore and Bush and just rank my votes and then have that all calculated together? So groupthink is based on that instant runoff idea. So when someone asks what's your favorite breakfast cereal, you can list your top 15
In order.
in order.
Not just the top 15, but
Yeah.
number 1 to 2.
And your number one will get more points. applied to it.
Oh, and you can Ajax, you switch them around, just click on it and move, it's sweet.
Exactly, that's right.
And then is it a whole text area field that you can type in whatever your answer is? Or is it, how are the answers?
Each answer has its own, it's listed in the results, but it also has its own page where you can have pages worth of detailed information about that answer. If it's, you know, if it's a political opinion, you might be supporting it with a large article and a photo. And then each answer also has its own comments, which is where we found a lot of the most interesting interactions. When there's a controversial answer, you might see that that answer has 40 comments. You can go in and talk about just that response.
So the answer has a short title, but then you can sort of support it with additional illustration or demonstration.
Do people who put their answers in, are they rated in a way as far as the quality of their response? Is that used to weight?
It doesn't weigh the results, but we do have a layer of quality ratings that if people submit an answer that's completely irrelevant to the topic, you can vote it down, and if enough people vote it down, it can disappear from the list. But we also conversely let you rate answers highly, which doesn't give it any more a higher voting score, but might earn that answer a special merit, like funny or well said, that kind of thing, just to make it more interesting.
And so as people are submitting answers, if the answer that they submit looks substantially similar to an answer that's already in the list, then they are presented with the option to just vote for that existing answer rather than add a answer that's already included.
And pretty much all based on one. Something that has several answers, not I'm sort of looking at this from the perspective of like a rating system. And the company that I work for, it's called Modwest.com. It's a job website. And people who pay us the money are the employers who want to have their and so we've always sort of wondered about how could we let people who have worked for these places give us feedback. And so the problem with that is that, as we all know, the people who had lousy experiences are the ones who want to be bad. And we don't necessarily want people who are paying us money to be described as being the worst places.
Yeah. Would that be valuable to you, apart from showing it to employees? Or?
To the employees, yeah, the job seekers are the ones that come to our website and use it for free and find stuff, and they, you know, it's all based on seasonal jobs. Our website is, and so all the jobs basically have a start date and an end date, and it's going to be, you know, they'll be doing something else again next year, and so they like to shop around a little bit, see what's out there, and see what have you heard about this place, what have you heard about that place, and so it's definitely dangerous territory to start trying to solicit some kind of feedback or comments that are more than scathing. So we've been, you know, just a star system or something very simple that would keep some of the noise down would be good, but I kind of like the, I was just trying to see if that would.
Well, for Modwest, I don't know how big your research budget is, or you have like 6 employees, I think. And in Modwest, we've always wanted to tap into the insights of our customers and find out, you know, maybe there's some feature they all want and they just don't know about it. We've done a few surveys, but they're time intensive and they're generally multiple choice, and you know, apart from putting another field in there, you never really know if you're getting at the right answers. And so for us, it's convenience, and it will be a cost savings because we won't be having to create these one-off surveys for a slice in time snapshot of opinion. We can let people participate in these living polls and surveys and hopefully get at the data over time.
About that, I have kind of a question about that, because I think that serves a really valuable purpose, and there are companies that have the less fun surveys like SurveyMonkey or whatnot. But I'd rather have, you know, a link to a poll that I created that people can extend on my website. And I know there's ways to do that, but the functionality doesn't seem to be documented. And
syndicating the topics on your website, or?
I don't even know what that is, but I found a way that I've seen people having blocks on their websites with a block of the poll poll of one specific poll.
Like on Missoula Bar Camp.
Yeah, I copied that from the, which I wish they were gonna be here. They said they were gonna be here, but on the Montana Web Association.
So you copied their code from their website and then just changed the ID of the top.
I've been trying to do this, find that on your help site for
That's
a
pretty
year
bad. We have, it's all buried in a little option called, I think, share. You click the share tab, you'll see the 3 different options for syndicating topics on your website. Where we want to be though is at a place where you can take a groupthink topic and let people vote for different answers and drag their answers right on the Missoula Bar Camp page, for example. Right now though, it serves the purpose of showing those top 10 answers and then takes people into the full topic. Yeah, that would be cool.
So if I was on a forum and people were discussing which features are valuable, I could potentially make a forum post that was a groupthink poll.
I'm sorry, you can make a what?
A forum post that was a groupthink poll.
Right. Yeah, and I've done that on a couple forums where I've embedded it's a GIF image is another way you can syndicate so that it's forum friendly. You don't have to upload JavaScript or anything. But that image is updated live with the top 10 answers, and if they click into it, they can get to the groupthink template.
You said that you're not doing any PR. Would doing that hinder your? No. Okay.
No. If you're talking about like doing something with groupthink.com, and yeah. Well, the thing we're sort of being under the radar with right now is Groupthink Pro, which is the private brand, not private, but the branded Groupthink community that businesses can create using the Groupthink platform.
So there's a division in our mind between groupthink.com, which is this fun social site which any topic you want, create your own groups, talk about anything, and then this new business class service that that General Mills is our first customer, where they have their own installation hosted by us, that they have used tools that we've built to make it look just like their brand. It has their logo and their colors and their fonts and everything like that, and then it's their community for their consumer advisory panel. And so they would, Steve, maybe you can talk about the General Mills is already doing some things because they're very interested in tapping into what their customers want out of their breakfast cereals and snacks and whatnot. So they want to create better products, obviously. Mm-hmm. So what were they doing before, and what was it about Groupthink Pro? Which
they've been using a few different ways to try to get information. There's a company called Communispace that offers sort of a community feedback environment. I've never used it myself, but from what I understand, it's a consultation service that uses some technology. It's very expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, and it's not fully automated. They craft all the reporting for you. So groupthink is meant to be really low intensive management. I don't know what the pros and cons would be in terms of information that you get from either or, except that groupthink is all about the technology and making it easy to use. But like I said before, General Mills sees an opportunity with groupthink to get qualitative data they couldn't get through traditional online surveys.
Seems like Groupthink could be a natural for software as a service, like a la Salesforce.com, and you could have some really attractive, inexpensive price points for limited, installs.
Well, that brings me to the question the challenge we're up against that I wanted to get your input on, which is the price point for this, because we look at very successful companies like Basecamp. Have any of you used Basecamp or heard of it? It's a project management tool. It's really slick and easy to use and simple. You can start using it for like $15 a month. Actually, I think you can start using it for free. And I think they're valued at like $200 million or something insane. But so there's that market, which is very similar to what Modwest is in terms of price point. But we talked to people too who say, hey, you're letting a company get at new insights they couldn't get to before. That's gold for a market research firm, and maybe you're talking about a $10,000 a month service. And so we see possibly these two disparate ways to attack the market, and I just wanted to get your feedback on pros and cons or insights.
What would be nice is if you could have like the Basecamp model where you could have a free version, which wouldn't be much more than having a whole on monitor on current Google.
Right.
Somehow wouldn't be isolated, you wouldn't be protected from the rest of the universe.
Okay.
And then move into other models where like maybe you can only have one poll or 2 polls per month, or period, since they don't end, set some kind of minimum price point to the point where, they can have gargantuan amounts. And it gets pretty expensive when you start getting into the higher ends of Basecamp. Starts getting pretty
Yeah, I
expensive.
can't remember what are some of these.
It's in the hundreds of dollars.
$500
$500
a month.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
You could get some pretty, pretty huge community.
But there are, maybe, scores of companies that buy $1 million a year software. Right, so.
Well, the people, there are gonna be, I would imagine, there are people who wouldn't want such a limited thing, they'd wanna rebrand. Because there's only limited rebranding options with Basecamp, you can like basically take off the brand, but if they wanna add all those other things, and all the like what General Mills is doing, I'm imagining they would, they're like, we don't care, we want the whole thing, we want the whole works, and we want everything modified, and they're probably making you do like little customizations too, right?
Right, that was part of the agreement, because we saw them obviously as such a valuable partner to have, and as a software startup, like our first customer is publicly traded, that's not too bad. And so we saw it as an opportunity to invite them to tell us, how can we make it better? Okay, we'll do that. Oh, you want that too? Okay, we'll do that. And so we built into the agreement a sort of a customization services, so they paid us to make these modifications, and so they had the opportunity to guide the product development in a direction that made it a better solution for them. And so I think it made sense for them, and it was obviously great for us to have them as a first customer.
Do they pay a flat fee with some support?
They paid customization fees based on several milestones, which I think we just got done with a final milestone. And then they negotiated for 6 months of the hosting the software for free. So then they'll just have a flat fee beginning in like November. And it's a 2-year agreement, so we got them as a customer for the next 2 years.
I'm not a marketing person, but the software as a service is just, it's going like that.
Yeah.
And it's just such an attractive model because you're not tied into the platform, you just pay per month, and if you don't want to pay it anymore, you stop.
Right, and that's absolutely the sort of structural model that we're counting on, is we'll handle the hosting, the installations, the monitoring, the maintenance, the backups. I mean, we'll take care of that. You pay us a monthly or an annual fee to have access to these website tools.
I'm a little bit experienced with Right Now, and other services. Well, it's built-in Electron content management service, but Right Now started at $20,000 flat fee. This was in 2000 when we first bought it, and then it was about $10,000 a year maintenance, and I think it's and now that was hosting internally at Blue Cross, and now they really. Right Now wants everybody to host with them because it's just so much easier. And I think it's probably about $35,000 to get in now as a base, or
Per year.
yeah, and then it's a yearly maintenance
Okay.
thing.
Interesting.
And I know that the university uses Right Now on their site, and I don't think it gets used as much as it could. I don't think it really grows to its potential because
I've used it a little bit, but
it's cumbersome.
Yeah.
And I think things like a product like GroupThink would be blow it out of the water in terms of, what's hip right now, what students are looking for, and being able to rank answers. Right now, somebody asks us a question, and then some potential student that's sitting at the help desk writes in some crappy answer that's canned. So I think a lot of the things that students and people are looking for is answers not from someone's getting paid to give an answer, but real people who have experienced, like campus life. What's the best place to eat on campus? Well, the university is going to say one thing, but the students at the university are going to say another.
And that's a really important distinction to make too, that there's a movement right now in the corporate world towards greater transparency, and a lot of people we know are going to be immediately turned off by the idea of giving up so much content control to users. And the possibility that students could write in and say something bad about the campus. But I think what we're seeing is a great movement towards companies welcoming that information, because their information is going to get said no matter what, whether it's on the university site, for example, or somewhere else. And the upside of that is so much greater, because then students feel plugged in and like they're being listened to, and you feel like you have that creative expression too at the same time. So we're counting on companies that are culturally ready for that openness. I don't know if I said this before, but there was a VP at Charles Schwab who was talking about their research projects, and he said that they learned a lot from asking their customers questions, but they learned that the richest information came from listening to the customers talk to one another. And the only way to get at that information now is through manually looking at these forums and trying to aggregate it and take notes. And groupthink is about automating that process. So that's really a core idea.
It's just there's such a problem with the traditional survey structure. It's just hard to get people to respond. They're boring. But a groupthink, you can engage your customer base and get them to actually respond. And they might say some ugly things, but the end result is definitely what I think should be. No question.
And there's a big, there are a whole bunch of applications for that kind of thing in healthcare. Between rating physicians and your experience and sharing common experience among certain treatment regimes and things. At St. Patrick's, we talked to St. Patrick's, because they did have a whole division called Medicine and the Humanities, that actually in some way might be the ideal way to get in with them.
Back to your corners. He's got Building a Social Networking Application in Rails from Scratch by John Garvin. Have you started already?
Nope.
And then Technology as a Tool for Social Change in B. Finding Allies through the Web. So.
And in C, we'll do a very brief test-driven design, and then that might disband quick.
Where?
So you could build
In
the
C, yeah,
social
C.
networking
So
application using test-driven design.
Right.
Mr. Merrill, how are you?
Good, how are you? It's globalwarmingsolution.org.
Okay.
And it's a Missoula-based national network of 35 groups focused on federal global warming policy. We also have a very active program here in Missoula, and we are focused on moving away from fossil fuels as fast as possible. And we have a plan for doing that. We would cut emissions 80% by 2025. And we would do this through very aggressive conservation, efficiency, and renewable energy technologies. It would only cost 3% of our gross domestic product and would create a lot of new jobs.
Now, who else knows about this? Are you guys state funded?
We're funded by private donations. We have memberships. We get some foundation grants. And we have 35 groups from around the country, and we're just trying to build support for this proposal.
Okay.
And we'd like to have legislation introduced that calls for phasing out fossil fuels as fast as possible at the federal level.
How long has Global Warming Solution been around?
Since 2003.
Okay. Are you the director? Are you an important
I'm the
person
founder
there?
and executive director, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So have you made your obligatory trips to Washington,
I have.
D.C.?
I have.
Okay. With whom have you spoken?
We had a Kyoto Protocol Valentine campaign in 2005, and we had people send in postcards, either through our website or actually through the Postal Service, and they encouraged President Bush to support the Kyoto Protocol. Then on February 14th, 2005, Valentine's Day, that was 2 days before the Kyoto Protocol came into force around the world without the United States. I went to DC, had these artists make a 10-foot Kyoto Protocol Valentine, and showed up at the White House grounds, invited all the media in Washington, and we presented this Valentine. And the BBC was there, French Wire Service, Associated Press, German television, Russian television, and that picture went around the world on the BBC website, and that brought a lot of people to our website. And we've continued to, we want like affiliated groups to be started around the United States that will help us get this legislation introduced at the federal level and passed into law. And we're on a deadline here too, because the international community needs to come up with a plan to succeed the Kyoto Protocol, and that has to be agreed upon. That international treaty has to be agreed upon by December 2009. And the decisive country in those negotiations is the United States. We need to pressure our federal government to commit the U.S. to deep and rapid emissions reductions, 80% by 2025, and we'd like there to be provision in legislation so that that becomes the U.S. negotiating position in the international climate talks as well.
So are you a lawyer?
I'm not. I'm a environmental activist.
Okay. Now, you mentioned this is a network of 35 organizations?
Yes.
Can we get a list or just a runoff of who's a part of this network? Like, for instance, would Nature Conservancy be a part of this?
No, most of the groups are local and regional groups from around the United States that are interested in supporting a proposal that moves us away from fossil fuels as fast as possible. The major American national environmental groups that have global warming programs are advocating moving away from fossil fuels at a gradual pace. And so we found these groups around the United States that want to move more quickly.
Do you have
And the list is on our website.
Okay.
Yes.
Which is global warming.
Yeah, globalwarmingsolution.org. And solution is singular. If you put an S on, you go to a different website.
Okay. Now, have you? What's the solution beyond replacement for fossil fuels? Like, what's
the main thing? See, this interesting thing about global warming is that it's very clear what needs to be done. We need to reduce emissions as fast as possible, and that's a matter of reducing energy use. The energy that we use should be used more efficiently, and then for what our energy needs, it needs to be produced from renewable energy sources like sun, wind, wave power, geothermal power, and those types of sources.
Now, we're stuck here in Montana, so to speak. Governor Schweitzer, who's an agronomist by training, he's got his master's in agronomy or soil science, he says there's no way we're moving away from fossil fuels. And he has his reasons, and the viewers can look at his interview with Charlie Rose a few years back, and he told, or a few months back actually, and he says, precisely, he lays out a good plan. So you think that your work is actually going to be substantiated, rather, by December 2009? In other words,
it's a very, very tall orders. We do not agree with the president, with the Governor Schweitzer's focus on continuing to develop fossil fuels.
Okay.
We want fossil fuel development to cease, and we need to pour all of our time, money, and civic energy into developing renewable sources and using energy much more efficiently. We believe that it's unwise for the governor to be continuing to develop fossil fuels, because it's very clear that the buildup in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is having severe impacts in Montana and around the world. He may want to do that for a variety of reasons, including economic development or perhaps his political supporters, but Mother Nature has a different agenda.
Mr. Merrill, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next natural disaster, man, because Katrina, that would have been a great time to put out a very strong policy solution. And one of our member groups there did that and grew their list by like 40,000 people.
And do you think the next time it actually renders a page to the user? So if you have like some message like, hey, I want to pass this on, yeah, but it's a special one that automatically gets cleared as soon as it gets used. So you set up messages like for instance, this place, I'm setting up this flash variable, but then I'm immediately redirecting them off to some other place, so they can reload a page. So it's still available then, but then when it displays the page, whatever page we go to, that message can be displayed on the page and then it gets cleared up.
To write it in a way where people can easily forward it to a friend, and you sign the petition, it needs to go into your CRM, your database, but also those Telegram tools are pretty important. That's a pretty powerful way to grow your business. So it's not like rocket science, not like, those are not sophisticated online tools, but a lot of groups don't use them, they don't know how to use them right. And the biggest thing is rapid.
And like I say, there's a send test package. It's mainly for moving, but there may be some way to get it to work with CHP and simple test. That, you know, it basically just watches the directory, and every time a file gets changed in there, it just runs your tests again. And having that going in a background window, or there's ways to integrate it with GNOME or whatever, where it pops up a little applet that turns red if something broke. And it does definitely take a little bit of a different mindset, like developing the tests. You really want one class that's under test, everything else is mocked out, and you're like you're not hitting external resources, you're hitting the database as little as possible, because those are the things that like take time to run. Like, you know, the logic of the code should just be like fast, and that'll keep your tests fast. And then anything that has to like hit external resources or whatever, you know, you put it in with your integration testing, or put it in and more of a something that gets run.
That's not the model, but if once we